Even if you look thin on the outside, you could still have a dangerous type of fat building up deep inside your body right now. You can't see it, you can't pinch it, but it surrounds your organs. And this fat behaves very differently from the type of fat that you can see in the mirror. Unlike visible fat, this hidden fat is biologically active. It increases inflammation, damages blood vessels, raises the risk of cancer, music, and can even affect your brain. This kind of fat, it's called visceral fat. To music, much visceral fat produces a factor. And when that factor goes up, it makes your blood more likely, music, to clot. I'm going to show you why visceral fat is dangerous and what you can do to fight it. Music. First thing you need to know is that your body has different kinds of fat. The fat you see in the mirror is just under the skin, and that's called subcutaneous fat. And it's not the most dangerous kind of fat. A much more dangerous kind of fat is called visceral fat. Visca means internal organs like your gut, intestines, liver. And visceral fat is buried deep inside the tube of your body, inside your belly. And the fat grows around other visceral organs. Okay? It is like styrofoam peanuts packing an overstead box about to burst off. If you could have a skinny box and it's overpacked with these styrofoam peanuts, which is visceral fat, and you don't even see it until the box is opened up and then it flies out. Right now, here's the thing. We all have a little bit of visceral fat, but the problem is when we have too much of it, that's when it can become deadly. So let's talk a little bit about what visceral fat is doing inside your body and why it's harmful. Well, the first thing, number one, is that visceral fat drives inflammation, chronic inflammation throughout your body. Visceral fat releases inflammatory cytokines like interleukin-6 and tumor necrosis factor alpha. And these cytokines dribble out right into your bloodstream and are sent everywhere in your body. They are the same kind of signals that your body uses to respond to injury or infection. But here, for visceral fat, these cytokines are released all the time. Now look, a little bit of inflammation can be helpful. It's actually part of how our body heals. But chronic inflammation is different. It's like a fire that can't be put out. So think about a bonfire by a campsite that spills out into a fire into the forest that becomes a wildfire. Very dangerous. And then that gets bigger and bigger and it turns into a forest fire and burns everything in its path. And this is what happens inside your body when you've got too much visceral fat. Persistent chronic inflammation disrupts virtually every single cellular pathway, hormonal pathway that you rely on for fitness, for performance, for actually mental stability, and for healthy aging. So that's one of the things that visceral fat does. The second thing that visceral fat does is it interferes with your circulation. And the way it does this is by interfering with something called nitric oxide, or N. Now, this is really important because nitric oxide, or N, is a tiny little gas-like molecule that your body relies on to stay healthy. It's a signaling molecule that does so many things. But when it comes to your circulation, NO, nitric oxide, helps your blood vessels relax and widen so that you get better blood flow, right? Tight blood vessel, poor blood flow, relaxed blood vessel, bigger blood flow. Think about it like opening up a traffic jam on a highway so you can have more cars driving right through. Well, here's what visceral fat does. Visceral fat increases inflammation, right? We know that, and oxidative stress. And when there's inflammation and oxidative stress caused by visceral fat in your blood vessels in your circulation, it reduces nitric oxide. And it makes your blood vessels tighten up, less able to open, poorer circulation. That means your tissue are not getting the blood flow that they might need. For example, in your muscle, if you are working out or running or doing anything strenuous, if you don't get enough blood flow, that's going to compromise your strength, endurance, ability to recover from exercise. And look, this will really matter if you are an athlete, but anybody who cares about their strength, especially as you get older, lower nitric oxide because of visceral fat releasing, chronic inflammation, and oxidative stress actually will affect you. If you're training, for example, and you're not seeing the kind of progress you want to make, if you're going to the gym, you have whatever it is you're doing. If you're not actually getting the physical strength you need, could be that your nitric oxide is down. Now, that's in your muscles. What about your skin? If you got poor blood flow in your skin because of poorer nitric oxide, because of inflammation due to visceral fat, that reduced blood flow can make it harder to heal if you cut yourself, and harder to repair your skin, your hair, regenerate your hair even. And all that leads to more visible signs of aging, including poorer skin means more wrinkles. right? So over time, this loss of healthy circulation due to too much inflammation, due to too much visceral fat, it affects your body at every level. Now, the third thing I want to talk about that too much visceral fat does is really important. It's related to blood vessels, and I'm going to show you how it's related to your brain as well, but this is something that most people don't think about. Visceral fat, as I told you, lowers nitric oxide, which decreases blood flow, but it does more than affect blood flow. It actually affects how your blood clots. Now, blood clotting is essential, right? You cut yourself, you're bleeding, you put some pressure on it, you're going to stop bleeding, right? That's very important to your body. It's a defense. Your coagulation pathway allows you to thrombose or clot. So you're not going to bleed out and then you'll heal after injury. The blood clot actually releases growth factors. But with excess visceral fat, the shift in the balance of how your blood clots and how your blood flows shifts. And this is where things get more serious because too much visceral fat produces a factor that's called PAI, plasminogen activator inhibitor number 1, PAI1. And when that factor goes up because of visceral fat, it makes your blood more likely to clot. Remember that inflammation that I said that fat produces? Well, that inflammation actually damages, scratches up the lining of blood vessels, right? Like think about like a knife scraping the surface of a non-stick pan. That's what chronic inflammation does to the lining, the inside lining of your blood vessels, which are normally slippery smooth. You scrape them up, now things are going to stick. Once that lining is damaged, it becomes very easy for blood clots to form. So, and when clots form, because you've got PI generated by visceral fat, now you've scuffed up the lining of the blood vessels. Clots are going to form. Clots can happen in arteries in the heart. That can cause a heart attack, happens in the brain. It can trigger a stroke. So too much visceral fat, big effect on your circulation and how your blood clots. Now there's a fourth harm that you got to hear about, and that is too much visceral fats associated with a higher risk of cancer. Right? Now here's how it works. Inside your body, there's an environment that is normally resistant to cancer, right? Our health defenses are at work. But when you actually have too much visceral fat, your environment in your body changes, becomes more inflammatory. I told you that earlier, and that makes it more favorable for the growth of cancer cells. So what's a cancer cell? A cancer cell is just basically a normal cell that's mutated from normal cells. Normal cell, mutant cell, right? And then your body's health defense has got to actually find and identify and eliminate those abnormal cells. But here's what happens. So when you got a lot of inflammation and a lot of metabolic haywire signaling going on caused by visceral fat, it changes the environment, and that makes it much more likely. It's for cancer to grow. It's like pouring gasoline on the embers of a fire. It's going to fuel the growth of cancer cells. And as those cells are growing, it also makes it easier for the cells to escape your immune system, like your immune super soldiers are. The cells are flying around looking for microscopic cancer cells. But when the cancers are growing fast, makes it hard for your immune system to actually find them and knock them out. Now, there's something else that visceral fat can trigger besides in inflammatory signals that make cancer cells grow faster. Visceral fat can help trigger something called tumor angiogenesis. Now, angio means blood vessel genesis, how they grow. Our body normally grows blood vessels as a defense for health. We need good blood vessels, but tumors hijack this system, right? And they grow blood vessels selfishly to themselves to feed themselves. And research in the lab has shown that a tumor that doesn't get a blood supply, not isolated from the blood supply, just basically can't grow bigger than about the size of a grain of rice. But once blood vessels grow up and touch the tumor, basically, you know, it's like hijacking the blood vessels. The blood vessels are kicking in the door of the cockpit and getting there and taking control. And now you've got blood flow into the tumor. Lab studies have shown that a tumor with blood flow can actually grow 16,000 times in size in just 2 weeks. So that combination, more growth signals, less immune control, haywire metabolism, increased blood supply for the tumor, and blood clotting. These are the conditions that cancers can develop, and it can actually help them spread as well. In fact, multiple studies have shown that people people who have excess visceral fat are at a higher risk for at least 14 different types of cancer, including colon cancer, liver cancer, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, endometrial cancer, prostate cancer, and more. These are the types of cancers that are quite common. We see people around us with these types of tumors, and too much visceral fat makes it more likely that these types of cancers can develop. Now let's talk about a fifth problem harm that excess visceral fat can have. Visceral fat can affect your brain if you got too much of it. In fact, it's linked to dementia. That's right, too much visceral fat can damage your brain health. How does this happen? Let's go back to the circulation. The same effect on nitric oxide, lowering nitric oxide, that then causes the blood vessels to tighten up. Less blood flow to the brain, especially in the tiny little blood vessels, can affect your memory, can affect your thinking, your cognitive function. And at the same time, that chronic inflammation caused by visceral fat doesn't just stay inside your body, it'll actually get into your skull, into your brain. And chronic inflammation in the brain, called neuroinflammation, that's a characteristic of almost every neurodegenerative disease, from dementia, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, you name it. Brain inflammation is actually present. So too much visceral fat causes brain inflammation, decreases brain blood flow. And guess what? It also interferes with brain metabolism. Now look, your brain is one of the most highly metabolic organs in our body. You really need to be able to crank. You don't have to just be studying for a test or doing a math problem to have your brain metabolism going up. Just ordinary decision making and just, being who we are, being the humans that we are, requires huge amounts of processing and energy generation in the brain. And how does the brain use that energy? It communicates from one neuron that's a brain nerve cell to another neuron. It basically text messages neurons each other. And that's actually how our brain actually work in order, if you want to have good functional cognitive skills. Now imagine all these things happening to that nerve baton passing of signal to signal to nerve to signal to nerve. All right, you got less blood flow, you got chronic inflammation, you've got poor metabolism, you've got blood clotting for forming. Okay, by now you know that visceral fat is dangerous if you have too much of it. But here's a question I get all the time. Dr. Lee, how do I know how much visceral fat I actually have? Well, you can't see visceral fat. You can't pinch it. You definitely can't tell how much you've got from a bathroom scale. A scale tells you how much you weigh, but it doesn't tell you how much of that body weight is actually fat versus muscle versus visceral fat. Two people can weigh exactly the same, but they can have different amounts of visceral fat inside the tube of their body. In fact, you can even lose weight. Right? That's what people want to do, lose weight. But guess what? You could not be losing visceral fat, meaning your weight can go down. The number can come down, but the amount of visceral fat you have could stay high. Now, that's why I like to talk about finding out about your visceral fat through something called body composition. And this is where a device called the Hume Pod comes in. This is a portable Atomy body composition analyzer that basically employs the same bioelectrical impedance technology, the same tech used in clinical settings. It's got about a 98% accuracy rate compared to DEXA scans, which are kind of a gold standard. And unlike a lot of other at-home devices, the HumePod doesn't just measure your lower body, it measures your entire body using extra sensors that are found in this pod. And it's got a retractable handle, so you can actually measure a lot of areas around your body. And then there's an app. In the Hume app, you can track over 40 different kinds of metrics. For example, you can track visceral fat, body fat percentage, skeletal muscle mass, and you can track this over time. You just need to step on the Hume Pod, pull up on the handle, and just measure yourself every day, every couple of days, every week. You can actually track your own visceral fat. And this matters because it helps to confirm that any weight that you're losing includes visceral fat. And by the way, it also kind of is a good metric, a good way to reinforce whether your daily habits are working. Are you sleeping better? Are you walking and exercising? Is it paying off? Are you having enough fiber to help you lower your lipids and lower your calorie absorption and improve your insulin sensitivity? Is your portion size control working? And all these things, if they're actually working, you're going to see on the Hume Pod long before it's going to show up on the traditional bathroom scale. Now, this summer, Hume, the company, is running their summer sale, and use my code, Dr. William Lee Lee, and my code will actually give you up to 50% off. The code is active for the next 7 days, and if you're in the U.S., the Hume Pod is HSA and FSA eligible, so you may be able to use those benefits towards your purchase of the Hume Pod. All right, you can learn more on the link below. If hearing all this sounds a little overwhelming, I agree with you, but there's some good news. There are ways that you can reduce visceral fat. And here's some simple steps that anyone can take to beat back visceral fat without having to go on to a weekly injection of something or go on to an extreme diet. Believe me, I get asked this all the time. What can I do, Dr. Lee, to lower my visceral fat? I tell people these aren't miracle cures or magic bullets, but they can make a meaningful difference in helping you rebalance your health and lower the amount of visceral fat you have and preventing you from gaining more visceral fat. Are you ready for the action? First thing you can do is get some high quality sleep. Now look, we all like good sleep. We know when we get it. And good sleep activates your metabolism, and it actually helps control how your body stores fat. When you get good sleep, your cortisol levels go down and are a little bit more balanced in your body, which prevents your body from depositing visceral fat deep inside your belly. Good sleep also improves insulin sensitivity, so your body's much more efficient at absorbing glucose energy inside your cells. And here's the thing, even a few nights of poor sleep can reduce your insulin sensitivity by 20 to 30%. That means your glucose goes up, your energy balance isn't as quite as good. Now you're storing fat in the wrong ways. You're going to grow visceral fat. So getting a good night's sleep actually can help counter that. The other thing good sleep does is it regulates your appetite, right? And actually helps keep your hunger and fullness signals balanced so you're less likely to overeat. At the same time, sleeping reduces inflammatory signals. And by the way, you can see this in people who are getting good sleep. You measure in their blood inflammatory signals like markers like interleukin 6 or tumor necrosis factor alpha or high sensitive C reactive protein CRP, and they all go down when you actually get better sleep. And this actually helps to counter some of the damage that's caused by excess visceral fat. Remember I told you visceral fat's highly inflammatory. Well, when you get good sleep, you're actually fighting that inflammation. And here's the most important thing. When you're getting good quality sleep, your body actually shifts from storing fat to burning it down. And that fat burning only happens when you're getting enough sleep and the quality of your sleep is good. Well, how much sleep should I be getting? It's a very easy answer. Research shows that getting 7 to 8 hours of high quality sleep every night actually is what's going to do the trick. Not a lot to ask for. You just need to be intentional about it to manage your sleep. Okay. Second action. You can cut out sugary drinks. Look, sugary drinks, we all like them. Sodas, sweetened juices, energy drinks. They are one of the fastest ways to cause your body to accumulate more visceral fat. Typical 12 Oz can of soda, you know how much sugar that contains? About 9 to 10 teaspoons worth of sugar. All right? Except it's in liquid form. So you can consume that in a couple of gulps. It gets absorbed really quickly, gives you a gigantic surge of blood sugar, and it hammers your insulin, and insulin goes up. And when you're doing that frequently, day in and day out with these sugary beverages, guess what it does? That sugar surge pushes your body towards storing that extra energy right in as fat, visceral fat. So you're not only drinking a lot of sugary drinks to get more calories, but you're also storing those extra calories and in fat. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that liquid sugar doesn't trigger the same fullness cycles as solid food. So, studies have shown that having 1 to 2 sugary beverages a day, think 2 cans of whatever color soda is popular, can increase your visceral fat growth by 10 to 20% over time. All right? And switching to diet soda doesn't necessarily get you off the hook because artificial sweeteners can disrupt your gut microbiome, your healthy gut bacteria. When that actually happens, it upsets your metabolism. And guess what happens when you upset your metabolism? makes it easier to store energy as visceral fat. And that's even if the drink has 0 calories. So don't be fooled by 0-calorie drinks. It can actually damage your metabolism and cause you to gain extra visceral fat. Okay, most people have never been taught how dangerous visceral fat actually is. And I'm sharing practical science-based strategies to help your health using food and lifestyle so you can take control of your body in ways that you might not have thought about before. But I want to let you in on something. This channel, my YouTube channel, is on the edge of a milestone. I have almost 1 million subscribers. That's 1 million people who got to make decisions on their health based on evidence, not fear, not fads, but real facts. And I try to actually deliver those facts in ways that are easy to understand, even though the subject matter might be complicated. But I really want people to take something out of what I'm telling you and take an action that can actually help your health. So every person who hits that subscribe button moves us closer to that 1 million mark. So if you've learned something from this video, be one of those people. Hit the subscribe button and help me build the largest source of science-based health information that you can use on YouTube. Thanks. All right, back to the actions you can take. Walking. Visceral fat can be fought by walking. Take a walk 30 minutes a day. All right, walking may seem simple, but it has a direct effect on how your body handles blood sugar and fat. Anybody can do it. And when you walk, your muscles start using glucose for energy, which lowers blood sugar. And even a single 30-minute walk can improve your insulin sensitivity for up to 24 hours. So you're good after walking after dinner, you're good for the next day until after dinner the next day. And over time, that kind of regular movement, let's call it a kind of exercise, improves your insulin sensitivity. And it shifts your body away from storing fat towards burning fat, especially visceral fat. Now, the other thing that's interesting is that walking also activates enzymes in your muscle that help to clear fat from the bloodstream, and it improves overall metabolic efficiency. In fact, studies have shown that people who walk regularly, and I'm talking about just 30 minutes a day, it's about 8,000 steps, they can reduce visceral fat by 10 to 20% over several months. That's a big win with a small ask, 30 minutes of walking. Okay? And you don't even have to change your diet in a big way. You should change your diet if you can improve it, but you don't have to change your diet in order to get those benefits if you're walking for 30 minutes every day. And by the way, walking also reduces the inflammation of the body. And walking is something you don't have to do in isolation. You can combine it with doing something that you enjoy. Put some earbuds on and listen to music or a podcast or a YouTube video, or better yet, walk with a friend or a family member or a dog. The key thing is, like everything else related to health, consistency. You don't need to just do once a week intense workouts. Hire a trainer. Just steady, regular daily movements helps a lot. Next action you can take, eat some dietary fiber, ideally from whole plant-based foods. And here's why. Fiber has a direct effect on your appetite. It lowers your appetite, improves your metabolism, and it changes the way that your body stores body fat, okay, energy into fat. When you eat fiber in foods like beans, white beans, red beans, black beans, pinto beans, nuts, legumes, and whole fruits. By the way, the fiber in all these foods slows down digestion and slows down the absorption of sugar into your bloodstream. And what that means is that your blood sugar is going to rise a little bit more slowly, and it actually makes your insulin rise also slowly, and this reduces the signal to store fat in your body. Fat also increases a sense of fullness, satiety, so you feel full sooner. Ever have a plate of beans? All right, you think you're hungry for snacks or maybe not even hungry for dinner after having some beans for lunch. You stay full and stay full longer, and that way you naturally eat fewer calories going into your body, and that will also have an important effect in terms of your visceral fat. The other effect that fiber has is that is on your gut microbiome. Fiber is fermented by the healthy gut bacteria. You have the microbiome, and that fermentation generates short-chain fatty acids, SCFA, we call them SCAFAs. These short-chain fatty acids, you know what they do? They improve your insulin sensitivity. So you use sugar more efficiently. There's less sugar floating around. So your body doesn't store it in fat, visceral fat. And in fact, short chain fatty acids also increase fat burning, all of which starts with visceral fat. So you're lowering visceral fat by feeding your gut microbiome. And short chain fatty acids also reduce fat production by your liver. In fact, studies have shown that eating fiber by just adding 10 grams per day, that's the amount of fiber you'd get in eating one avocado, that's associated with a 3 to 4% reduction in visceral fat over time. One avocado. Average intake that people have about 15 grams a day, which is way lower than a recommended amount for health, which is closer to 20 to 30 grams per day or more. So here's the thing. Upping your daily fiber is very, very easy. In fact, if you look at some of the common foods that you like, that we all like, you can start calculating how to get your fiber intake into daily healthy range, 30 grams or higher. Okay, as I just said, one avocado, 10 grams of dietary fiber. Have a pear or an apple, got 5 or 6 grams of dietary fiber, right? You got 15. We are on our way to getting to 30. Cup of raspberries, 8 grams. Now we're to 23 grams of fiber. Almost there. We're getting there, right? So increasing fiber is quite easy to do. You want to try to increase your fiber every day to at least 25 to 30 grams a day, higher if you can do it. Best way to do it is using whole plant-based foods. Okay, action number 5 I've been telling you about is portion size. This is something that everyone should take note of because this is totally in your hands. You don't need to go on an extreme diet to reduce visceral fat. You just need to reduce the amount you eat. And if you do that every day, it's going to have a measurable effect on your metabolism. It's going to improve your metabolism, and it's going to actually have a measurable benefit on fat storage. Right? So how do you do this? People always ask me, like, I need some help. Simple. Aim to eat about 20% less on every meal that you normally would. So sometimes that's called stopping when you're about 80% full. Harachi Buman, okay? Then when you consistently eat less, your body begins to draw down energy, and that can make the difference. You start burning down excess visceral fat, whereas when you overeat, you're actually gaining more and more. So again, you can day a 10 to 20% reduction in daily calorie intake. That will lead to a meaningful reduction in abdominal and visceral fat over time. Take slightly smaller portions. You can try a smaller plate and then don't fill it up completely. You can also pause halfway through the meal. I always tell people, quit the clean plate cup. Just don't take as much. And if you're full and you want to eat slowly, you'll get full sooner. Just leave it. It's fine. Don't worry. Next time, don't take so much. Also, if you slow down your eating, that allows your gut hormones to work with your brain. So you're not going to shovel food in your body so fast, your brain doesn't have a time to register that it has food and signals. Now, eating nonstop actually is happening when you're not paying attention to your food. So you want to pay attention to it. But also, it can be caused by distracted eating, right? You got your phone, you're scrolling through your feed. All right, that's distracted eating. And you're paying attention to the phone and you're not paying attention to how much you eat. It makes it much easier to overeat, and you'll be stuffing yourself with extra calories before you know it. So aim to eat a little bit less. About 20% less is a good start. It's not a huge amount less, but it's enough to get you started and do that consistently before you start to cut down even more. Most people focus on the fat that they can see, but visceral fat is the invisible fat that can do the most damage. Before you go, I want to share something with you. We are so close to hitting 1 million subscribers on this channel. So if you found this video helpful, please subscribe. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. And I will keep on breaking down the science and ways that people can use. And that way you can take control of your health from what you eat by knowing how your body actually works. And by the way, if you want to go even deeper, check out my other videos on YouTube where I talk about metabolism or fat loss and food as medicine. So see you in the next video. Dr. Lee out. Hey, if you like that video, then you're going to love this one. Check it out.